going on YouTube? So doing my top 10 power forwards video. Just recently did my small forwards video. It was either yesterday or the day before, I can't really remember, but if you haven't checked that out yet, go check that out along with the rest of the series. I will be putting the link to the entire playlist for the entire top 10 series in the description below. And yeah, like I said, go ahead and get started. So got my honorable mentions, and at number, well, I guess my first honorable mention is the power forward for the Milwaukee Bucks, and that is Greg Monroe. So Greg Monroe's been the talk of a lot of trade rumors recently. I think that he'd be a great fit. Obviously, in a lot of places, he's a very good back to the basket scorer. He's also a very good rebounder, and he can fit in well, like I said, with a lot of playoff contenders right now. And I can see him going a multitude of places. For one, my Indiana Pacers, I think, would be a good fit for him. The Boston Celtics would probably be a good fit for him as well. There's a lot of Eastern Conference teams in the playoff hunt right now. They could definitely use a power forward like that. And see if I can actually find his averages for the year. Excuse me, but yeah, anyway, move on to my next on the honorable mentions, and I've got the power forward for the Dallas Mavericks, and that is Dirk Nowitzki. So obviously any other year I'd have Dirk higher than this. He is one of the greatest power forwards of all time in my opinion, probably top 10, and obviously in the latter stages of his career, I believe this is his last year. I'd have to check up on that for sure. But like I said, for the stage that he's at in his career, it's been a pretty good year for him. So get back to Greg Monroe's averages, averaging about 10 rebounds, 1 block, and 16 to 17 points per game this year. And then Dirk is, I believe he's averaging around 16 points per game. And like I said, a guy that's still shooting pretty well this year, still about a 90% free throw shooter, so about 17 points per game, and shooting about 45% from the field, so averaging about 7 rebounds as well. And like I said, still a pretty good season for Dirk as a whole, especially for the age he's at, for a Mavs team that's competing actually pretty well in the West. So move on to my last on the 5 of my honorable mentions, the 3 outside, and that is Derek Favors. So Derek Favors has had a really solid year so far. In my opinion, it's been a little bit rough of late, but he's averaging about 16 points per game. I think that tends to be the trend on the honorable mentions, and then about 8-9 rebounds, and shooting actually over 50% from the field, but he gets a lot of his baskets down low, so that's not too much of a surprise. Missed a little bit of stretch at the beginning of this calendar year with injury, but of late he's been alright, averaging about 15 points per game since he came back, I believe, on January 25th. So moving to the top 10, and at number 10 I've got Oklahoma City's power forward, and that is Serge Ibaka. Serge isn't having the greatest season by his own standards, but still averaging around 13 points per game. He's definitely taken a back seat to Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant this year. But like I said, still nonetheless having a pretty efficient year, shooting about 76% from the line, about 49% from the field. About 2 blocks per game, like I said, 7 rebounds, and 13 points. So he's still putting up some quality minutes. Hasn't been great of recent. His player efficiency rating has actually gone down to about 2.5, somewhere in that region, and hasn't put up more than 10 points since, I believe, February 1st, and then before that it was January 26th. So like I said, rough stretch of late for Serge Ibaka. So move on to my number 9 power forward right now, and a guy at the beginning of the year that I would have slotted a lot higher than this, but nonetheless, I have the Spurs power forward, and that is LaMarcus Aldridge. So the Spurs have been very solid this year, but it's definitely, I mentioned this in another one of my videos, it's really not LaMarcus Aldridge's team. I think he is playing a big role, but not near as big a role as he played in Portland. He's averaging around 17 points per game, between 8 and 9 rebounds, shooting above 50% from the field. So like I said, good year for LaMarcus Aldridge. Seems weird to put him as the number 9th ranked point guard, but kind of where he fits right now. So move on to my number 8 point guard, or I keep on saying point guard, power forward, and that is the Knicks' Kristaps Porzingis. So Porzingis has really taken the role as the Knicks' best player this year and kind of the Knicks' future, and hasn't, like I said, this has just been a trend for all power forwards. Hasn't been great of late, but averaging around 14 points per game, 2 blocks, 1 steal, 8 rebounds, shooting about 85% from the line, but kind of a easily 42% from the field. He's a pretty rangy shooter, though. He can draw out to 3, and he's got a good mid-range game as well. So move on to number 7, and I've got the Chicago Bulls center and power forward, mainly power forward though, and that is Pau Gasol. Guy that's been very good over the last month, and guy that's averaging around, again, 17 points per game. That's really 16, 17 points seems like it's the only average for power forwards on this list, and shooting around 47, 48%. But again, a guy that normally goes down low, so not much of a surprise. Averaging a very good 11 rebounds per game, though. That is one of the things that stands out for him. And I think one of the better parts about Pau Gasol this year is just he's been one of the steady pieces for the very, very up and down Bulls team this year that's had problems with inconsistencies and injuries, obviously now with Jimmy Butler going down as well, alongside, I believe Joakim Noah is still out as well. I'd have to check on that. I know he's been out, or I know he was out for a little while. Yeah, he is still out with injury. He's been out since the middle of January. Wasn't putting up huge numbers before. He's never a guy that will put up huge numbers, but very good rebounder and defensive player for the Bulls. Anyway, back to the topic of power forwards, and move on to my number 6 power forward, and that is part of the Cleveland Cavaliers' big 3 in Kevin Love. So Kevin Love's had an improved year. There's no doubt about that. He's a little bit injured at the moment. Still hasn't played up to his true potential, but I really don't know what his true potential is in Cleveland with Kyrie Irving back. Obviously, not the same scoring and rebound numbers he had in Minnesota, but he's averaging still around 11 rebounds per game, 16 points, and shooting not great, around 43%. But I don't think his career shooting averages have really ever been anything special. Alright, so move on to my number 5 power forward, and I've got the very underrated Atlanta Hawks player, and that is Paul Millsap. So Paul Millsap's one of my personal favorite power forwards in the NBA. Again, it just seems like every big man for the Atlanta Hawks is underrated, whether you want to go for Al Horford or Paul Millsap. But I think they like playing that way. Paul Millsap, a guy that's averaging around 18 points per game, 9 rebounds, 1 block, 2 steals. So obviously very good defensive player. Really very good on both ends of the court. And again, for me, a top 5 power forward in the league, maybe a top 20 player, and a guy that just doesn't get that respect when you're just talking about whether it's in the media or just recognized as a top 20 name in the NBA. Alright, so move on to my number 4. And I've got the currently injured Los Angeles Clippers power forward, and that is Blake Griffin. So obviously, there's been a lot of trade talks for Blake Griffin this year. He's ran into a lot of trouble in Los Angeles, and I don't really know where he'd go if he did get traded. I think the trade rumors have become more than rumors at this point. I think they've become like legitimate discussions, and I mean, not to take away from Blake Griffin, obviously this year has hurt his status a little bit, but I think the way he is right now, he's right exactly where he should be. Actually playing this year, he was averaging around 23 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. Guy that has very much improved his game over the last couple of years, become a much better free throw shooter, around 73%, and can pull out and shoot mid-range as well, shooting around 51% on the year. Alright, so move on to my number 3. And the guy playing for the best team in the league this year, and that is Draymond Green. So Draymond Green's averages aren't extraordinary, but the amount of triple-doubles he's put up this year really is. So he's averaging around 14, 15 points per game, a little bit above 1 block and 1 steal, about 7 to 8 assists, and about 10 rebounds. Like I said, just putting up stats really all over the place. Not a great free throw shooter, but also a guy that's not going to get a ton of points because that job mainly belongs to Steph and Klay Thompson. Alright, so move on to my number 2, and I've got the Indiana Pacers power forward, and that is Paul George. So with the emergence of Miles Turner, Paul George it seems like he's kind of slotted back into his normal spot, but he's averaging around 24 points per game this year. Again, not shooting great, around 41%. Started off the year very hot and it's been good since, that's for sure, but it seems like the numbers are a little bit down. Had good numbers the last 2 nights though, still shooting around 86% from the line. He's always been a very good free throw shooter, averaging around 3 3-pointers per game, 2 steals, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. He's always been one of the better wing defenders in the NBA, probably especially when he's playing small forward. In my opinion, top 3 wing defender in the NBA, up there with LeBron. And yeah, so move on to my number 1 power forward, and I've got the New Orleans Pelicans power forward / center, but mainly power forward, and that is Anthony Davis. So been a rough year for the Pelicans as a whole. Obviously, they've got the building blocks around Anthony Davis. Very good averages still this year, averaging around, again, 24 points per game, 10 rebounds, 2 to 3 blocks, 1 steal, 2 assists, and like I said, a guy that's been even with having a mediocre Pelicans team behind him, been a very good player this year. I don't know, I wouldn't really call him an MVP candidate like last year, but like I said, a guy that's been very reliable for the Pelicans this year, even though he's been injured on and off. But yeah, so that concludes my top 10 list of power forwards in the NBA. Like I said, if you haven't checked out the other 3 videos yet, small forwards, shooting guards, and point guards, definitely go check that out right now. That's pretty much it. So yeah. What's going on, YouTube? So earlier today, I started my new series, which was my daily top 10, and I did the top 10 NFL fan bases. So I wanted to start another series that I said I was going to do, and that is my ranking series. So basically, I'm going to do the